Good evening. Good evening, folks. Warm welcome to this special broadcast. We're coming to you each night to look at exactly what is the road ahead for us. The road ahead for us today, as is being described by the government, is simple, that what we have been going through over these last few days, over these last few weeks, one should say, maybe our reality is going to change, but just about. A rather elaborate press release has been issued now by the government. And in that press release, what the government is essentially doing, it's telling us that, well, you will be in a position in which you can get about with your business, but just a bit. Take a look at our special broadcast with big newsmakers, big stakeholders, and critical data points to figure out exactly how this entire scenario is going to impact your own life.
We're literally now moving towards the fag end. We're moving towards the fag end, the last couple of days of this lockdown 2.0. It's been an exercise which I don't think anyone would have anticipated maybe a month back. But here we are, almost a month and a half into lockdown. And we don't know exactly what is going to happen post the third, when technically speaking, the legal boundary, the legal deadline which was created, when that comes to an end. We want to look at specific issues today. We got a full lineup of experts who represent various sectors. We want to look specifically at what the story of India's economy is really going to be once you move beyond this lockdown extension deadline, which comes to an end 48 hours time from now. What will be the story across various sectors? That is what we're looking at. We got numbers of each sector, which will explain to you just how bad, how deep the situation could be, and what is the real challenge for the Prime Minister. So let's straight away first look at the first big question. The first big question which we want to attack is straightforward. If you really continue with this lockdown, because it's been suggested that there are red zones, there are green zones, there are orange zones, are you in a position in which you continue with this lockdown across the entire country, or is a zonal-wise breakup of all these lockdowns really possible? And how will that really play out at the end of the day? Nikunj Sanghi is there with us, and Nikunj is representing the Automobile Sector Association. We got Stalin, he's been on many of our programs. We got Anurag is representing the restaurants and the hospitality sector. But this is the fundamental question that we want to look at. Will a zone-based lockdown relaxation really work in favor of India's economy? Is that what is really required at the end of the day? Now, what do we mean by a zone-based lockdown? The government today has rather interestingly put out numbers of what the picture across India is really looking like today. This is the hard reality, and you need to really just take a moment just to take these numbers in, because look at what's being stated. This graph that we've put up, this number that we've put up, is coming via Axis Bank. It seems only the green zones will be opened soon, and this is what Axis Bank report is saying. They account for a small fraction of economic activity, 19.4% of the country's total, and even less. That is the reality, and that is where the real problem is. So if you look at the overall number of districts across the country, you look at the green zones and you look at the red zones. The problem for the Prime Minister, and we've tweeted about this as well, the problem for the Prime Minister is that most of the activity, the economic activity, is taking place in areas which are these red zones. So if 83.1%, imagine if 83.1% of credit-based activity is taking place in areas which are red zones, and if those red zones don't open up, then what do? If 52.7% of India's GDP is coming from red zones, add to that 27.9% orange zone. If red plus orange is to be added up, you're literally looking at what? Almost 81% of economic activity. 81% of India's GDP today comes from areas which would be qualified as dangerous areas. So if you don't open these dangerous areas, what use is this partial or zone-wise lockdown really going to achieve? 80%, that's a number that you really want to look at. If the danger mark is 80%, let me take you deeper into that figure, and then we'll get all our guests to talk about that. The government today, and this number we've got from government, and that's why the beauty of this program, we specifically look at data, and every question I put up on the show comes only and only on the basis of data. So look at the NCR region, for instance, the National Capital Region, which consists of what? Which consists of states, partial state like Delhi, it consists of parts of Haryana, consists of parts of UP, and parts of Rajasthan. Now look at this. In Delhi, the entire state of Delhi, the entire half state of Delhi, Union Territory of Delhi, 11 districts classified as red zones. So what does that tell you? That Delhi on Monday is not going in for any kind of relaxation in this lockdown. You look at what's happening in Haryana. 2 red zones, 18 orange zones, which is 20 out of 22. 20 out of 22, and we're looking at over 95% of a state being declared as dangerous territory. Look at Uttar Pradesh, 19 red zones, 36 orange zones. Out of 75, again, 54 districts. Again, well over 60% of a state is technically speaking coming in this danger category. Now you look at these two numbers together. On one hand, you have the overall percentage. 80% of India's GDP is coming from areas which are red zones or orange zones. In the NCR region itself, you cannot have a scenario. You cannot have a scenario where you can go in for a reversal of this lockdown, again, because of these numbers. This is where we are. Let me straight away first get in a view from our panelists here. Siddharth Zarabi is joining us live. I first want to just look at the macro picture with Siddharth. And Siddharth is a well-known economic journalist, our friend. He's been on many of our TV programs as well, and now he joins us in our latest avatar. So Siddharth, I'm going to break it down later on the show in course of various sectors, but I just want you to weigh in on the challenge before the Prime Minister. How does the Prime Minister then justify this move? If 80% of India's economic activity is taking place in areas which would qualify to be dangerous areas, unless you open these areas up, what is the purpose, Siddharth, of going in for any kind of relaxation in these lockdown areas?
Bhupen, it's a wonderful question. And, before I answer your question in detail, I would just like to say one simple thing. Our classification in terms of administrative circles does not end with districts. In fact, tehsils are actually where the classification and the work happens. And I would argue for an area like Delhi with 11 districts, you will have to perforce move towards a tehsil classification rather than a district in a highly populated center like Delhi, because otherwise Delhi, or for example, the single district Union Territory of Chandigarh are never going to get opened up in the near future. So I would argue first up on your program that in areas we need to move below the district classification and move into the tehsil classification when it comes to imposing the red, orange and green classification. That's point number one. Point number two, the graphic that you've been showing, and that's an excellent graphic which shows how difficult it will be to restart economic activity. We are already addressing the economic, the social aspects, the socio-economic aspects. 6 trains will start today, point-to-point trains to take stranded labor to their homes. And this number of trains is going to go up. And that takes care of one of the biggest pain points and politically sensitive issues that the government is grappling with.
I'm on this graphic because right now the central government has come up with data which is based on districts. Now, if I simply look at this one simple snapshot, and if I say that 52.7% India's GDP coming from red zones, 27.9% coming from orange zones, straight away, if 80% of India's GDP is coming from areas which would qualify to be dangerous territories, dangerous zones, how do you deal with this question?
Precisely. And Bhupen, you know that unlike the United States, our industrial activity is a lot in the informal sector. What some of these graphics are missing out, that even the largest companies depend on smaller suppliers who work in the informal space. So I would say if you just look at the Mumbai metropolitan region, and the Delhi NCR as two industrial bases. Then the third would be the Chennai Coimbatore sort of corridor. And you could also take the Jaipur Alwar Delhi corridor. It's very clear we are not going to be able to restart economic activity. And that's why I am arguing for a tehsil-based approach as well as an industrial cluster-based approach. We will not be able to restart economic activity, Bhupen, and we can keep discussing this till the cows go home, unless you move away from the revenue circle district classification. It will not work. Simple, period, full stop.
And what is before I bring in the other experts, Siddharth, what is the government then planning to do? Is there because this is data, this chart that I put up, Siddharth, is chart which has been released by the government. Does the government have a view on a distinction between a district-based approach versus a tehsil-based approach that you're talking about?
State governments have complete administrative ability to go down to the block level. Why restrict it only to the tehsil level, Bhupen? You know that a subdivisional magistrate is the king and queen and God and almighty master of that particular subdivision that he administers. I would say that decentralized approach and decision-making powers being left to at the ground level, with the belief that 9 out of 10 times the SDMs and their senior bosses, the divisional commissioners, will not make the wrong decision. We will have to allow the sub-divisional level authority to have a greater say and not a top-down say in this. You see that the center is doing what it can, the restart of the trains being an example. But industrial cluster level approach, take Neemrana, one last example, 30 seconds. Neemrana. On the highway, and all of us know about that. Neemrana is a small industrial cluster, Bhupen. Let the Neemrana SP, let the Neemrana SDM and those authorities decide on the opening up there, give them the resources and the authority, and they will deliver a fantastic job, Bhupen.
Okay, let me then break it down to the level of various sectors. And since Nikunj Sanghi is there, he's the chairperson of the former chairperson of the Federation of Automobile Dealers Association. We want to specifically look at, I think it's a doomsday scenario. Zero sale, can you believe it? Zero sale, not one single vehicle has been sold for brands like Maruti in the domestic space. So I want to know, ho kya raha hai? I mean, is this leading to some kind of a suicidal scenario? I mean, already the automobile sector was not really in the best of shape. Let's play the report card, of all these top brands. The auto sector report card. Look at this. In Maruti company, the oldest company, one of the best performing companies at one point of time, over 90% market share. Look at where they are. Total sale down to 632 from a high of 1,43,245 same time last year. Now, let me just hold you for a moment. If you thought that this story was only limited to Maruti, you are grossly mistaken. Because you look at the other brands as well. Whether it is Enfield, whether it is Mahindra, the story is the same. In Mahindra, 5,505 units versus 72,000 units. So look at the huge drop. Look at Eicher, the Royal Enfield company, zero sale. I mean, Enfield Bullet, everyone was very fond of riding these bikes. Not one single sale domestically. You're looking at 91. Total sale down to 91, and maybe many of this would perhaps be in the export sector as well. So let me bring in Nikunj Sanghi then on this one. Nikunj, zero sale? I mean, who would have ever thought that there will come a time when not one single vehicle will be sold in the automobile space? What's happening to the automobile space today?
So I think I've been in this industry for 4 decades now, 40 years and counting and more. And in my lifetime, I don't think, not only seen, I had not even imagined a situation like this. And so this is a zero sale from Maruti, but let me tell you, this is going to be the same story as the numbers come out by tonight and tomorrow morning. And in fact, I tweeted, I said that probably this was the easiest month in terms of reporting your numbers because everybody is going to report a zero as far as domestic was concerned. And this does not end at manufacturers. This is the same story of retail, which is, so if FADA has to release figures of vehicles sold to end consumer, even that is going to be zero. And that I'm saying from two-wheeler to commercial vehicles to earth-moving equipment to tractors to almost everything. And I'm talking of the April story. I will also take you away from the chart that you talked about and Siddharth was talking about tehsil level. And so I'm going to talk about the ecosystem. So we had Vikram Kirloskar from CII, also obviously the vice chairman of Toyota Kirloskar, in a chat with on ET Auto. And he said if everything becomes normal, everything, which means that there is no zone categorization, if everything becomes normal, it's going to take us at least about 4 months to start business. And why he said so was, and it made a lot of sense, he said that we cannot make a 99.99% vehicle. If a vehicle needs to be delivered, it has to be 100%. So giving an example, let's say I produce an entire vehicle and I've done everything about it, and everything mechanical, electronic I've done about it, but I don't have a door handle, just a door handle. Can I deliver the vehicle?
You can't.
I cannot. It cannot leave the factory at all. And to source these components is a huge challenge, not only within India. I think just after the lockdown, some of the OEMs had released figures that their dependence on imports is anywhere from 18 to 27% of the vehicle is imported today, specifically because of coming BS6 technology. So a lot of electronic equipment, including sensors and ECUs, are mostly imported from China and Korea. Now, and then there is this huge backlash on, should we be importing from China? And can we trust China? Can we trust China quality? And I think every manufacturer has talked about it. Now, in a scenario like this, even if it opens, assuming that there are no zones and there are no sectors, will we be able to produce 100% and deliver over the next few months? The next question, and I think Rajiv Bajaj talked about it, and very, very vociferously. He said that unless my dealerships open, who do I produce for? Now, permissions that we are getting at present are permissions only to start our service activity and not our sales activity, because obviously vehicle sales are non-essentials. They are discretionary. They are the last thing on the mind, and obviously would come very, very low on priority of the government or even a tehsil level or a district level officer when it comes to opening up. So if dealerships don't open, then who do you produce for? Because one, everybody's talking about a lean inventory. So you will produce not based upon what you think will be sold, you will produce based upon demand. And so everybody's also talking of a demand forecasting model. Now, the first point of contact of the customer is a dealership. So the demand actually gets generated. The entire forecasting module will get generated only from the dealerships. And yes, obviously digital, because I think a lot of it is going to shift to digital.
But how long? But Nikunj, I take your point that, how would you deliver a vehicle if there is no door knob? And then I can see that it will take you back in the supply line problem. Is there, in course of your conversations, I saw Prakash Javadekar, Union Minister, is also talking about this. Nitin Gadkari is talking about this every day, that we need to do something for the auto sector. But is there let me put it this way, bluntly, is 2020 as good as gone? Is nothing happening in 2020 for the auto sector?
Yes, it is. It is. It's a hard fact, but it is.
Okay. Unfortunate. So let me then move on to the next sector. And the next sector, much like the automobile sector, is a sector which employs a whole range of people. The tourism, travel, hospitality sector. Now look at the story. The slowdown in the tourism sector will have knock-on effects on hospitality. Occupancy rates will remain very low. Nikunj Sanghi is saying 2020 is gone in the auto sector. Look at the hospitality sector. Occupancy rates will remain low. Effort to increase and improve bottom lines. Many businesses expected to cut down travel and accommodation costs of their employees. So once again, I bring you back to that macro picture. the macro picture, those areas which are contributing the maximum to the Indian economy are areas which also fall in the dangerous category. Even when travel bans are lifted, ask yourself, who's going to fly? Where is the civil aviation infrastructure today? So let me bring in Anurag then on this one. And Anurag represents the restaurants and the Hotel Federation of India. Anurag, it's, Nikunj has given us a very blunt story. The 2020 as good as gone. Let me say this, I've been in touch with various top hoteliers across the country, and they're all saying we just don't know. What lies in store? What lies in store for the tourism industry today, Anurag?
Well, precisely the same sentiment as what Nikunj said. This year is gone for us. And, there is a larger problem with our sector is that, for example, F&B is the largest employer of human capital in India, employing over 7.3 million people directly. I'm not even talking about indirect employment. Now, if that kind of employment loss, even if like a 30% employment loss, you're talking about 2 million people going jobless. Now look at the real problem. Real problem is not about these, shops being allowed to open or restaurants being allowed to function. The thing is, economic activity will start only if there is a consumption. As long as lockdown is there, there is no consumption. Post-lockdown, there are so many other factors which will stop the consumption from taking place. The new hygiene norms, the new social distancing norms, impending recession. I like it will impact every other sector as well, which is part of the discretionary spend like us. That is going to hit us. So we are looking at some very, very tough times ahead. And I don't know, once the lockdown is lifted, how many of these restaurants and hotels will actually be in a position to come back to life. Some may have already died a death. We'll only know when the lockdown is announced.
So what? So Anurag, look at it this way. Anurag, there is a 5-star hotel or the premium hotel category. There are then those hotels or restaurants, which one would say would fall in the retail category, which would be in your malls and commercial establishments, etc. Are we saying that post-Sunday, if the government was to go in for zone-wise, reversal of lockdown, green areas, are you basically saying that this zone-wise reversal of lockdown has no meaning unless you create a scenario where malls can open up and commercial establishments can open up and everyone can just go back to life as normal?
Absolutely. Even if you allow, as I said a little while back, you allow the restaurant to open, but a lockdown is in place overall for people to travel. There is a scare of virus in the air. Where will the consumption happen? Like, what Nikunj was saying, you can allow me to manufacture automobiles, but if there are no buyers, then I'm only putting more pressure on myself. I have unsold inventory with me. Similar with us. If there are nobody there to consume, then why are we even opening? And even post-opening, whenever it happens, I think we are looking at even worse time, because in our industry, typically the proportion of fixed operating expenses are fairly high, which means that we will be in deeper trouble. And yes, it's the most forgettable financial year for us. And I just hope that it just gets over and done with.
So now I'm hearing that there are 3 key sectors: travel, tourism, hospitality, automobile, all these sectors, representatives saying 2020 is gone, that we have no hope left. But look at the reality. The reality is, in the United States of America, despite the stimulus of trillions of dollars, the number of people who filed for job losses, 30 million people who filed for job losses in these last 6 weeks. And we got these figures from our friends in the United States of America. These are all figures which are being used aggressively by the US media to capture the scale of the problem. But in India, what's the problem in India? So look at the scale. 1.7 lakh crore job losses. 1.7 lakh crore is the stimulus which is being promised, but job losses, 130 million in the unorganized sector. So I want to bring in our friend Stalin then, who runs Video Volunteers, the country's largest non-profit organization, which is there to capture the interests of the poor, the downtrodden, the migrant workers. And Stalin has been on many of our programs over these last couple of weeks. Stalin, welcome. Good evening. I look at this number, Stalin. I look at this number of people who are filing for job losses. And then I capture the story of migrant workers, who are all traveling across the length and breadth of the country. exactly what happens post Sunday? Are you getting the sense, Stalin, that these migrant workers will start going back to these big cities in search of jobs?
There is absolutely no indication of that. In fact, the fear is on both ends. I mean, most disastrous situations and conflicts throw two kinds of very, very dichotomical picture at us, right? One is the very, very positive, people helping each other. But on the same hand, we also see the worst in humanities come forth as well, right? So the pre-existing biases come forth in every conflict. And this pandemic is no different as far as India is concerned. So we have begun to see how much the rural communities are discriminated against. So we have to keep that in mind. Now we are looking at about, different people estimate differently. The economic survey would say 93%. Excuse me. Could you go and stop it? Yeah. No. 93% of the population is employed in informal sector. In Niti Aayog puts it at 85%. We know that's a huge number of people employed in the so-called informal sector who contribute to a lot of the GDP. There are two issues that will stop them from going back immediately. One is their own fear of what happened in the cities as far as their security and benefits were concerned when the lockdown was announced. Let's not forget that we were arranging planes and buses and trains and etc. for those stranded outside. But the migrant workers had to walk home. And as you know, Bhupen, very well, that we have ourselves documented many communities who have walked for 500 kilometers to reach. And so this is something that migrant workers will not remember, will not forget for a long time. So
these are all pictures that you yourself have recorded. Video volunteers have recorded these pictures, and we're just playing these pictures for the benefit of our viewers across the country. These scenes have unfortunately become the new reality. Yes. And every time I look at these pictures, it scares me, it frightens me to think what will happen post Sunday. But talk us through these pictures. What do these reports tell you, Stalin?
Well, these reports, basically what we are looking at here are people who are walking between different parts of districts. This particular picture is from of people going from one part of Jammu to another part of Jammu. They walked about 280 kilometers. Now remember, they also have to dodge the police. They also have to dodge the barricades. So they are taking longer to reach. Many have died in the process as well, and media has reported on that as well. We also have recorded people who have walked from Delhi to Indore, from Gujarat to back to Uttar Pradesh. They have all walked, right? And thanks to good people on the road, they've gotten their food. Now, many of them have lost wages. If you remember, the lockdown and the curfew were announced towards the end of March, and a lot of those people were not paid for the month of March. Now, many of these people also work in the construction industry. And as you know, the construction welfare fund sits at about 52,000 crores in terms of the cess they have collected. Right? The government also announced in the end of March that these cess collected should be spent on migrant workers, which obviously they have not gotten so far. So different governments have said they will be paying, like Kerala said, they will pay 1,000 rupees per 20 lakh laborers. Andhra Pradesh also made some similar statements. But we still not see this welfare fund going back to them. So all this history will be with them before they take on a new job in your cities. I also feel that, this is a time for a good opportunity for re-engineering. Uncontrolled consumerism is not exactly the best thing to have in the world, right? In a lot of cases, like environmental degradation and environmental pollution and exploitation of natural resources is directly linked to the uncontrolled consumerism, which further is linked to manufacturing and other things. And every time we try to say, okay, what do we do to protect the environment? What do we do to encourage local development by local economies? Everybody put their hands up and said, too late. We have taken the path of consumerism. We cannot turn back. It's a global phenomenon. But guess what? For the first time ever, here we are in this global opportunity where everyone is hit by the same thing. Maybe this is a time for us to reinvest in rural economy, in block level economy, so people don't have to migrate so much. This is the time to sort of re-engineer a lot of things why can't we have ginger hotels in the block level? Why can't we have facilities, universities, and all the things that we've talked about when we started this nation? We talked about the rural economy.
So that's the whole problem. That's the whole problem. That's the whole problem, Stalin. That's the whole problem, Stalin. We got representatives from all sectors today. You know, we want to look at the migrant workers question. We want to look at the auto sector. We want to look at the tourism travel sector. लेकिन अब हम हिंदी में बात करेंगे, चूंकि बहुत से हमारे दर्शक हैं जिनका लगातार ये कहना है कि इस प्रोग्राम पे, इस कार्यक्रम पे और इस माध्यम से हम डेटा खूब सारा दिखाते हैं लोगों को, और चूंकि हम डेटा लोगों को दिखाते हैं इसलिए उस डेटा की जो अहमियत है वो ज्यादा से ज्यादा लोगों तक पहुंचनी चाहिए। तो बड़ा स्पष्ट सवाल ये, और निकुंज सांगी से शुरू करूंगा। निकुंज जी, अगर मैं ये कहूं कि मारुति गाड़ियों का न बिकना, अभी हमने देखिए सब सेक्टर्स की हमने चर्चा की, अब मैं ये कहूं कि मारुति गाड़ी का न बिकना, महिंद्रा का न बिकना, एनफील्ड का न बिकना, क्या हम ये माने कि ऑटोमोबाइल सेक्टर अपनी मौत की तरफ बढ़ रहा है? क्या खत्म हो रहा है क्या बिल्कुल ऑटोमोबाइल सेक्टर वगैरह?
नहीं, तो मैं डूम्सडे की बात नहीं करूंगा, और मैं ये तो डेफिनेटली नहीं कहूंगा कि ऑटोमोबाइल सेक्टर खत्म हो रहा है। पर ऑटोमोबाइल सेक्टर के लिए अगले 18 से 24 महीने बहुत परेशानी का समय है, और इस वक्त में डेफिनेटली ऑटोमोबाइल इकोसिस्टम में कुछ डीलरशिप्स हैं, कुछ कंपनी हैं, कुछ मैन्युफैक्चरिंग है, कुछ ब्रांड्स हैं जो शायद नहीं रहेंगे, जो इस 1.5-2 साल के दौर से नहीं निकल सकेंगे। पर इसको एक दूसरे तरह का देखने का तरीका है। अब क्योंकि लोग बाग कह रहे हैं कि दूसरों के संपर्क में नहीं आना है, सोशल डिस्टेंसिंग करनी है, तो एक बहुत बड़ी हमारी जो चर्चा का विषय हुआ करता था वो शेयर्ड मोबिलिटी हुआ करता था, और कहीं पे हमारे माननीय वित्त मंत्री ने भी ये कहा था कि गाड़ियों का खपत इसलिए कम हो गई है क्योंकि शेयर्ड मोबिलिटी आ रही है। तो अब ये मानना है कि इस कोरोना के माहौल में जब हमको आदमी को आदमी से डर लग रहा है कि क्या मैं उसके संपर्क में आऊं कि नहीं आऊं, तो शेयर्ड मोबिलिटी कम होगी और पर्सनल मोबिलिटी की माहौलियत शायद ज्यादा होगी। तो जो छोटी गाड़ियां हैं, जो एंट्री लेवल के 2 व्हीलर्स हैं, जो मुझे जरूरत है मेरे रोज काम पे जाने के लिए, मेरे रोज अपने बिजनेस में जाने के लिए, शायद वहां पे कुछ डिमांड निकल के वापस आएगी। यूज्ड कार में शायद कुछ डिमांड निकल के वापस आएगी।
सिद्धार्थ से पूछते हैं इस बात के बारे में। सिद्धार्थ, सरकार का क्या रवैया है? सिद्धार्थ, मैं शायद आप मुझको अक्यूज कर सकते हैं कि मैं शायद बहुत एक सख्त शब्द का मैं उपयोग कर रहा हूं। मैं मौत का सबब क्या ऑटोमोबाइल सेक्टर, मारुति का, ये मारुति की बात नहीं है सिर्फ ये। सिद्धार्थ, क्या मैं ये जो मौत शब्द का जो मैं प्रयोग कर रहा हूं, क्या ये सही शब्द है आपके मुताबिक?
थोड़ा एक्सेसिव शब्द है भूपेन, पर जर्नलिस्टिक लाइसेंस है हमारे पास, इसलिए आपको वो लाइसेंस देते हुए मैं इसमें एक बात जोड़ना चाहूंगा कि भारत भूमि में हम पुनर्जन्म की बात करते हैं, और शायद निकुंज जी ने उस तरफ इशारा किया। मेरा ये मानना है कि इस समय पे एक प्रकार से जो ये कहा जा रहा था कि सब कुछ अब ओला उबर हो जाएगा, अब वो ट्रेंड कम होने वाली है। और जो आज हमें 2 आंकड़े मिले हैं महिंद्रा से और मारुति से कि उन्होंने जो सेल की है, उन दोनों की सेल्स हुई है भूपेन, पर वो सारी सेल्स एक्सपोर्ट की हुई हैं। जैसे ही मुंद्रा पोर्ट खुला है तो मारुति ने गाड़ियां एक्सपोर्ट की और महिंद्रा ने लगभग कोई 4,500 ट्रैक्टर भी एक्सपोर्ट किए हैं। इसलिए हर समस्या में से समाधान मिलता है, पर हाँ, सरकार को 2 काम जरूर करने पड़ेंगे। एक तो जीएसटी जो ऑटो सेक्टर पे है उस पे थोड़ा ध्यान देना पड़ेगा। जीएसटी जिस रेट पे बहुत सारी गुड्स पे लग रहा है, सर्विसेज पे लग रहा है, उसको कम करने की आवश्यकता है। हालांकि सरकारों के पास केंद्र और राज्यों में पैसा नहीं है। और दूसरा, जो BS6 और कुछ और चीजों पे जो बड़े कॉस्टली ट्रांजिशंस हैं, शायद कुछ समय के लिए उन पे हमें रोक लगानी चाहिए। और हमारा ये ऑटोमोबाइल सेक्टर न केवल नौकरियां देता है, बट ये मेक इन इंडिया की एक फैंटास्टिक एग्जाम्पल है। अगर इसको क्षति पहुंची तो देश को क्षति पहुंची।
लेकिन सिद्धार्थ बताइए ना, इसको क्षति जो पहुंची, लेकिन बताइए, बिल्कुल भाई ये कह रहे हैं कि गाड़ी में जब एक वो हैंडल नहीं लगेगा तो गाड़ी को कैसे कस्टमर को दे पाएंगे? यहाँ पर हम बात करें ऑरेंज जोन, ग्रीन जोन, रेड जोन की, अब भाई एक जोन में से व्यक्ति आता है जो वो दरवाजे का कुछ पार्ट बनाता हो, जो वो व्यक्ति बाहर नहीं निकल पाएगा सिद्धार्थ, तो फिर ये लॉकडाउन रिवर्सल का मतलब क्या रहेगा, ये बताइए।
भूपेन जी, तभी मैं कह रहा हूं, कापसहेड़ा जहां पे पहली फैक्ट्री लगी थी मारुति उद्योग की, हम सब ये जानते हैं कि कापसहेड़ा की पूरी कम्युनिटी और कापसहेड़ा ग्राम को छोड़ के अगर वहां कुछ था तो मारुति की फैक्ट्री थी। आज वहां पे कई दफ्तर खुले हैं। इसीलिए मैं कह रहा हूं कि हमें इंडस्ट्रियल सेक्टर्स और इंडस्ट्रियल क्लस्टर बेस्ड अप्रोच करनी पड़ेगी। मेरा ये मानना है कि सबसे बड़ी समस्या अभी ये है कि लेबर भाग भाग के जा रहा है और कॉर्पोरेट इंडिया, जो बड़ी कंपनीज हैं और सरकार है, उनको अभी इंसेंटिवाइज करना चाहिए अपने लेबर को यहीं पे दिल्ली, मुंबई, चेन्नई, बाकी जो इंडस्ट्रियल क्लस्टर्स हैं वहां रहने के लिए। बहुत, और ये थोड़ा दुर्भाग्यपूर्ण है कि बहुत छोटी कंपनीज ने अपने लेबर की अनदेखी कर दी, वो कम होना चाहिए। सरकार पे ब्लॉक लेवल, क्लस्टर लेवल अप्रोच है की आवश्यकता है, और इंडस्ट्रीज पे, खासकर बड़े उद्योगों पे ये जरूर मैं मानूंगा कि जिम्मेवारी है कि थोड़ी अपनी प्रॉफिटेबिलिटी को कम करें और अपने लेबर को अपना समझ के उसको इस समय पे समर्थन दे।
ये
500,000 रुपए की
बहुत बात आपने कही। हाँ, प्लीज, सिंस आपकी तरफ आ रहा है तो बिल्कुल बनता है कि आप इस बात का जवाब दें।
सो आई थिंक सिद्धार्थ ने बहुत ज्यादा अच्छी बात कही और बहुत करेक्ट बात कही। तो मैं दूसरा परिवेश आप सब लोगों के सामने रखना चाहूंगा कि एमएचए की एक गाइडलाइन ये आई है कि प्राइवेट सेक्टर को सारी तनख्वाहें देनी है लॉकडाउन पीरियड के लिए, इररिस्पेक्टिव ऑफ बिजनेस चले या नहीं चले। अब मैं सिर्फ मध्यम उद्योगों की, सो मैं बात कर रहा हूँ एमएसएमई की, और मैं बात कर रहा हूँ डीलरशिप्स की जो भी एमएसएमई में आते हैं, और जो 85% ऑफ द टोटल ऑटोमोबाइल एम्प्लॉयमेंट को अकाउंट फॉर करते हैं। तो अगर 100 आदमी एम्प्लॉयड हैं तो उसमें से 85 या तो कंपोनेंट मैन्युफैक्चरर्स के पास हैं जो छोटे उद्योग हैं, और या फिर डीलरशिप्स के पास हैं जो लोगों को नौकरियां देते हैं। और इन दोनों की ही स्थिति ऐसी है कि शायद वो उन्होंने मार्च में शायद 95% लोगों ने पूरी तनख्वाहें दी बनिस्बत इसके कि सिर्फ आधे महीने काम हुआ था, और इसी वजह से दी कि वो हमारे एम्प्लॉइज हैं, हमारे लोग हैं। अभी समस्या ये है कि हम अपना बिजली का बिल कैसे दें, हम बैंक का ब्याज कैसे दें। हमारे खर्चे का 50% पोर्शन सिर्फ तनख्वाह है।
बताइए। सरकार
को ये समझ में नहीं आ रहा है कि ईएसआई जो एक हेल्थ कैलामिटी के लिए कलेक्ट किया जाता है, उसमें मेरी जो नॉलेज है उसके हिसाब से करीब 65,000 करोड़ के रिजर्व्स हैं, और अभी एम्प्लॉय इसलिए नहीं आ सक रहा है काम पे बिकॉज उसकी हेल्थ इमरजेंसी है। इट्स नॉट दैट कि बिजनेस नहीं चल रहा है या हम उनको रोक रहे हैं, बट हेल्थ इमरजेंसी है, कोरोना वायरस की वजह से वो नहीं आ सक रहा है। तो इस वक्त अगर सरकार अपने ईएसआई के फंड्स यूज करके, और ये जो 3.5 करोड़ लोग हैं जो सिर्फ मध्यम उद्योगों में और छोटे उद्योगों में लगे हुए हैं, उनका सम पोर्शन ऑफ तनख्वाह नहीं देगी तो वो ईएसआई का पैसा कब काम आएगा?
सवाल ये उठता है कि आप जाएं तो जाएं कहां? एक दो खाइयों के बीच में हम अपने आप को फंसा हुआ देखते हैं। एक और प्रधानमंत्री जी हैं, उनके सामने एक ये राजनीतिक उनके सामने समस्या है कि आप अगर ये ग्रीन जोन, रेड जोन, ऑरेंज जोन की बात करते हैं तो भाई देश का 80% हम देख रहे हैं, देश का 80% इलाका ऐसा है जहां पर सबसे ज्यादा इकोनॉमिक एक्टिविटी होती है। शायद यही एक कारण है कि किरण मजूमदार शॉ जी, जो कि बायोकॉन की चेयरपर्सन हैं, इस वक्त एग्जीक्यूटिव डायरेक्टर हैं, जब हमने उनसे कुछ समय पहले बात की थी, कुछ दिन पहले, एक बार के लिए दिखाना चाहता हूं आप लोगों को कि उनका क्या अभिप्राय था। किरण मजूमदार शॉ की सुनिए कि वो क्या कहती हैं कि किस प्रकार से आपको इस समस्या से निपटना चाहिए। Are we really in a position, Kiranji, according to you, where we can be from lockdown 1.0 to 2.0 and now 3.0? Do you think we're ready for that?
We can't afford 3.0, Bhupin, because I think we are beginning to hurt in terms of the economy. And I personally believe that when we look at what also the Prime Minister has said today, that he says that the only places we really need to worry about are the red containment zones. I think he is completely right in that, because I think if you look at India, India is not one homogeneous country. India is a country with many states. Each state has its own ethnicity. And when you talk about ethnicity, it also has its own genetics, genomics, that will also make it respond to the virus in a different way. There is also the economic levels of different states, in terms of the affluence levels or the poverty levels. You've got the disease burden to think about, and so on and so forth. So we are a very diverse country. That is why you're likely to see hotspots, you're likely to see green zones, you're likely to see amber zones. And I think really this is about using the last several weeks that we've spent in the lockdown, understand the risk, to assess the risk, and to manage the risk. I think that's what it's all about. So the first thing was about understanding the risk, and understanding the risk was about mapping out the zoning of the pandemic in terms of the impact of the viral spread. So that's how these red zones, amber zones, and green zones were arrived at. And I think what many states have learned to do extremely well, and this is a template being used all over the country, is to absolutely seal off the red zones or the red hotspots. Now, even in a city like Mumbai and Delhi, which have got the largest number of deaths, you're seeing that these are sort of happening in very dense spots. It's happening in certain places. It's not across the city. So I think you need to start looking at economic activity linked to these red zones and red.
Possible. Kiranji, let me put it this way: is it really possible? Say, for instance, I'm in Uttarakhand right now. There may be parts of Uttarakhand which would have been impacted by this virus. Do you think we have that kind of bureaucratic mechanism where we say we're going to shut down one part of a state and we're going to completely open up, let's say, 3 or 4 other parts of the state? Do we have that kind of mechanism?
I think we do have it, because I think in Karnataka, for instance, even in the very city of Bangalore, we've managed to actually identify the real hotspots within Bangalore. And I can tell you they've sealed off those places, whether it's little housing developments, whether it is particular areas, whether it is apartment blocks, they managed to do that. And what they are doing very smartly is to avoid those hotspots, even when it comes to traffic and logistics. So you can do it. And today with technology, we are having this Zoom call, okay? And I think with technology, you can do much of this. I think first and foremost, they have done mapping very well. I think you need to have surveillance and safeguards when you open up. So when you lift the lockdown, which we can't afford to extend anymore, I think you must manage the risk.
Must manage the risk. Kiran Shaw believes in life you always take risks. In business, you always take risks. It's a straight question. It's a straight dilemma before the Prime Minister. Does he go in for the risk to human life, or does he think in terms of managing the risk to the economy? Let me thank all of you for joining us on this special edition. आप सबका बहुत-बहुत धन्यवाद. जो स्पष्ट कहानी जो हमारे सामने है, वो सिर्फ और सिर्फ इन आंकड़ों में है. आंकड़े ये दर्शाते हैं कि अगर आपको अपनी जेब में पैसा चाहिए, तो स्थिति कुछ ऐसी बन गई है कि शायद आपको अपनी ही जान पर थोड़ा सा खतरा मोल लेना पड़े. क्या खतरा मोल लेना चाहिए? क्या सरकार सोचेगी कि खतरा मोल लिया जाना अनिवार्य हो गया है? अगर आप ये खतरा नहीं मोल लेते, तो भी क्या आप आर्थिक स्तर पर कोई एक बहुत बड़ा खतरा मोल लेने जा रहे हैं? यही सबसे बड़ी समस्या आज की डेट में प्रधानमंत्री मोदी के सामने है. Thanks to all of you for joining us in this special edition. This is live across all social media platforms. आप इसको सभी हमारे social media platforms पे देख सकते हैं. आप सभी के सुझावों के लिए आप सबका बहुत-बहुत शुक्रिया. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bhupen.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.